Hi, in this tutorial I will create or give an overview of an ASP.NET Core RFID application. So in this tutorial we will create an RFID web application using ASP.NET Core that can scan RFID tags. In addition, the application will also be able to add, edit or delete tag information that are stored in an SQL Server database. So here you see the RFID system that are used in this tutorial. It is on desktop reader Neo 2 in combination with several MyFair Classic 1K RFID tags in different colors like this. This RFID reader is very easy to use. You just plug it into your computer, into the USB port of your computer, and then in order to test it you can just open Microsoft Word, Notepad, etc., and then just click inside the document so that the document is active. Then plug in the RFID reader and scan a tag or put a RFID tag on top of the reader, and then the unique RFID should be appearing here in the document like this. So basically it's very simple to use, but of course it requires some skills in programming if you're going to create an ASP.NET application. So let's take a closer look at the application we are going to create in ASP.NET Core. So here you see the final application that we are going to create step by step. So basically the startup page is just a text box, and inside here, when this text box is active, you can just tap a new RFID tag on top of the reader, and then this tag ID will pop up here, and then based on that it will retrieve information from the database that are stored on this specific tag. So when I tap a tag here, information regarding this tag, which in this case is this tag ID, and in addition to the tag ID it's stored other relevant information regarding this tag into the database. So basically I'm going to create a simple hardware store application where you can scan different tools and then get information regarding that tool, and each tool has an RFID tag connected to it. In addition to the scanning, you also have tool management, and in the tool management you can create new tools with a specific tag ID, and then these all available tools with a specific tag will be listed in a list like this. So every time you create new tool, this web page will pop up where you can create a new tool name with a specific tag ID. Clicking save, then it will pop up here in the list. You can also click on the hyperlinks here in order to edit an existing tool, and then this will pop up. So then when I click on green tool, then you can change the tool name to something else, or also the tag ID can be changed to something else. In addition, you can also delete one of the tools from the list. So basically this is the application that we are going to create step by step using ASP.NET Core. So now we have a plan for what we are going to create. We have an idea of this final application which has this scan possibility and this tool management where we can create new tools and edit tools, delete tools, etc. So now we need to take it step by step, and the first step would be to scan an RFID tag into a text box. Not worry about any database at all, just be able to tag the unique RFID tag into a text box in a web page. Next step would be to retrieve information based on that scanned tag. Also here I will not use any SQL Server, I will just hard-code some information regarding different tags and use an if-else sentence in the C# code in order to retrieve the correct information regarding that specific tag. Next, we will retrieve information from the database based on this scan tag. Next, we will get a list of all available tools that are stored in the database. And next, we should make it possible to add new tools into the database from the graphical user interface. Next, make it possible to edit an existing tool in the database from the graphical user interface. And then finally, delete an existing tool in the database from the graphical user interface. So then let's start with the first step, basically scanning an RFID tag into a text box on a web page. So here you see the first step of this application. Here I have a text box, and then every time I tap a new tag, this tag ID will pop up here in the text box. In addition to the tag itself, this tag reader also adds a carriage return, so it will always start on a new line in this text box. So basically, this is the application that we're going to start with. So let's open Visual Studio. So in this tutorial, I will not make the code entirely from scratch. Since I have already made the application, I will just go through the different steps and take a look at some of the details inside the code. So here in step number 1, I have just created a new ASP.NET Core web application in Visual Studio. And then under pages, these are the default pages that are created, and I just start editing the index.cs HTML file, which is the startup page. And then inside the file called index.cs HTML, I just create a div element, and then inside there I create a header using h1 header in HTML with a title RFID application. Then inside there I create a form, and then inside the form I just create a text box, or since this is a text box that should be multiple lines, I'm using a text area instead, which is the same as a multi-line text box in Visual Studio, but in HTML you use text area. So then I just specify an ID, number of rows. Here I just set 10 rows, you can set more or less, and number of columns. Since this tag ID is 8 columns or 8 characters, I just set the columns width to be 10 characters. I also set autofocus, since this RFID reader needs to have this text box to be in autofocus in order to automatically enter the tag ID that you tap on top of the reader. So basically, this is everything you need to create in the first step of this application. So then I just run it, and then the application starts in my default web browser after a few seconds. Like this. So now this is the index page. Here is the header RFID application, which is here, and this is the text area box, which has a label where I specify here. And then I can just make this text box active, and then I can take a tag that I have here and put it on top of the RFID reader. And then you see automatically the tag ID is written into the text box like this, and it's ready to enter a new tag ID on the next line. So then I just tap another tag ID I have here on top of the reader, and then you see the tag ID is another unique tag. I just continue, and I can just continue to tag to tap lots of tags on top of the reader like this. So basically this is the first step of your RFID application created with ASP.NET Core. So then let's start on the next step of this RFID ASP.NET Core web application. And in this step we are going to retrieve information based on the specific tag we scan on top of the reader. So basically we are on step 2 of in total 7 different steps in this application. So here you see step number 2. Here we have instead of this text area we are just creating a basic text box, and then when we tap tag ID here, then in the bottom here we will retrieve information on this specific tag. So in this case when we tap at this tag ID, it will say here the color is red. So let's see how we can create this this step of this application. So let's go to Visual Studio. So now we are back in Visual Studio, and we're still using this index page. So let's just open it. And now we have the same div here. We have the same header, and we have the same form here. But instead of a text area, I'm using an ordinary text box. And in HTML, it's just called input. Then you specify a name, ID, type, and the text box is of type text, like this. You can also specify a bootstrap class here, since this ASP.NET Core application has this bootstrap CSS library built into it. So then by creating this or selecting this specific class, we are using the built-in bootstrap feature to specify the layout of the text box. Then we need to specify that this should be autofocus and typically required. And then when we tap a tag on top of the reader, we should have a post back to the server. So then we here on change we set on change this.form.submit. This means since this form is of a type post, then when the text box is changing, the page goes directly back to the server, and the server in this case is this index.cs html.cs file. So let's open this one. And then in this index.cs html.cs file, here is the C# code, or the code behind page for the web page, and this page are executed on the server side of this application, while this index.cs html is on the client side. And then here we have a built-in method called onPost, and this method is automatically called when this page are posted back from the client. And then in addition I have created a method called getTagData, which are called when this onPost method are automatically called from the postback, then it will go into this getTagData method, which I have created here. And inside here I start by retrieving the unique tag ID from the web page. And then in order to do that I use this request.form, and as you see here, this text box which has the name tag ID, it's inside this form. So then I can use request.form and the name of this text box, like this. And then the value that are put into the text box are then put into this variable called text ID, which I define here on top of the class as a public string tag ID. Then, since this RFID reader also add a carriage return, then I just remove the carriage return on a new line from this string, and then the rest will just be the unique tag ID. So then I just use the built-in trim end method that are part of C#. So now here I will have only the tag ID that I will use further in the code, and then I have a basic if-else sentence here, and if tag ID is this number, then I will specify on the web page tag color is green. If the unique tag is this value, then I will specify that the color is red, blue, yellow and black. And if none of those tags are put on the reader, I will just say that the tag color is unknown. And then, as you see here, that this variable tag color is defined on top here as a public string tag color. And then I can go back to the web page, and then in the bottom here I have created tag ID, and then I use a built-in feature in ASP.NET Core and the Razor syntax. Then I just use alpha model dot tag ID, which is the name of the variable I have specified here, and then tag ID gets the value here, and the same with the color. So this tag ID has color at model.tagColor, which is the name of the variable I have specified here, and the tag color are specified here in the if-else sentence. So then by adding this line of code, I can run the application. And the application will open in my default web browser. And then you see the tag ID field is automatically activated. So then I can just tap a unique tag ID on top of my reader, and then you see the web page has now been sent back to the server and back, and then it's specified here tag ID 74 etc. has color red, and then I can tap other tags on top of the reader. Now I was tapping a green one, yellow one, blue one, black one, and then back to the red one, etc. So basically this simple application reads the unique tag ID, post the page back to the server, and then on the server it are reading the unique tag ID, and based on this if-else logic it finds the color and then put it into this public variable that are available on the web page as this at model.tagColor, like this. So basically this is the second step of this application. So then let's go to the next step of this ASP.NET RFID Web Application. So in this step we are going to retrieve information from the database instead, and we are going to use an SQL Server database. So here you see the graphical user interface, which is identical as the previous step, but this information in the bottom here are now not hard-coded in the C# file, but are retrieved from the SQL Server database. And in order to do that, we need to start by creating a simple database in SQL Server. And then I have created just a simple table called tool with 3 columns: tool ID, which is a primary key, the tool name, varchar 100, and the tag ID, which is varchar 10 in this case. So I just create this simple database and this simple table in my local SQL Server database. So here you see my SQL Server Management Studio. I have created a database called tools, which I have here. And here on the tables, I have created this table called tool. And then here you have the script, table script for this tool table. It consists of 3 columns: tool ID, tool name, and tag ID. And then I have created some data into this tool table. I'll just right click on it and then click edit top 200 rows, and then I can create some default data into this table. And it has 5 tags stored in the table. And the tool name is green tool, which has this tag, red tool has this specific tag, etc. And I also can create or write a specific query. Select all from tool, click execute, and then you see this is the information that are stored in the database. So let's go to Visual Studio and see how this application has been created. So then let's start with the web page. This index.cs HTML, it's identical as in the previous step, so there's no need to make any changes here. But in addition, I have made C# class and a new folder called models, and in the models folder I have created a C# class called tool.cs. So basically you just in here in the project you just right click and add a new folder, and then I name it models. Of course you can name it whatever you like, but models is the preferred name in ASP.NET for the folder where you create the different classes. And then next I just right click on models and click add, and then just create a new class like this. And then I have created a class called tool. Let's just open it. And then in this class I have created some properties: tool ID, tool name, and tag ID. Then I have created a connection to the database. Like this. So this is my SQL server. This is the database name. And then I just also use integrated security equals to true, and then trusted service certificate equals to true. So that's the connection string. Then next I have created a method called get tool data, and inside that method I have created a simple query: select tool ID, comma, tool name, comma, tag ID from tool where tag ID equals to tag ID, and that's the input or argument of this method, so the string tag ID. And then I just use basic syntax in order to retrieve values from the database based on this query, and then put it into these properties: tool ID, tool name, and tag ID. So then I'm retrieving tool ID from the database, put it into tool ID property. Same for the tool name, put it into the tool name property, and the same for the tag ID, put it into the tag ID property. So that's the tools class and the get tool data. So let's go to the code behind file, index.cs html.cs. So here in the on post I'm having this basic method called get tag data, which I have created here. And then I start with the same. I retrieve the tag ID from the web page using request.form. I remove the carriage return from the string, and then I'm just creating an object of this tool class, and then I'm calling the get tool data method for this specific tag ID. And the get tool data method is here in the tool class. So basically that are the different updates that we need to do in order to make this happen. So then let's just start this application. As we mentioned, the web page is identical, the same graphical user interface. But now the information that are popping up here in the bottom is not hard-coded in the C# code, but are retrieved from the database. So then I'll just tag different tags here. And then information regarding this specific tag are popping up like this. So now I'm tapping a black tag ID. I have a blue one, I have a green one, I have a yellow one, and also have a red one, like this. So basically, this is a simple application that are retrieving information from the database based on this specific tag ID we enter here in this text box. So let's go to the next step of this RFID ASP.NET Core Web Application. So in this step we are going to make a list of all available tools in the database and present it in the web application. So here you see the web application. This web page is the same. This is used to tap or scan different tag IDs and then present information regarding this tag that are located in an SQL Server database. In addition, if you click on the header here, Tool Management, then this new web page are popping up where I just basically list all the available tags that are present in the database with tool ID, tool name and tag ID. So let's see how we can create this application. So then let's start with the SQL Server Management Studio. As you remember, we have these available tools in the tool table. Here you have tool ID, tool name and tag ID. So now we are going to retrieve this information from the database and present it in a new web page in our ASP.NET Core Web Application. So in Visual Studio, we need to start by creating a new web page. So under Pages, we have created a new web page called Tool Management .cs HTML, and we have this code behind file. So we need to create this one. Let's just open it, and then inside this application we have basically just created an HTML table with rows and columns, and then we have 3 columns: tool ID, tool name and tag ID, and then we can have multiple rows based on the number of rows that we have in the database. So then we just use a for each in order to be able to retrieve all the columns, all the rows that are stored in the database. So that's this web page. And the first step we need to do is to create a new method in our tools class. So let's open the tools.cs file. Previously we made this get tool data. Now we have created a new method called get tools. Of course you can create name it whatever you like. And basically this method are using this query: select tool ID, tool name, tag ID from tool, and then all the available rows in the database are stored in a list, a C# list, and then this list are then returned back as a return value in this get tools method. So it doesn't have any argument, but the return value is this list of all available rows that are stored in this tool table. So that's the new getTools method that we need to create in the tools class. Let's go to the code behind file. So the toolmanagement.cs.html.cs, which is the code behind file for this new tool management web page we have created. And then in the onGet method, we need to create this list of records from the database, and then I just create a public variable, or a list in this case, which I'm using here. I have created a new method inside this this page called getToolsList, which I have created here. Basically, it just creates a new object of this tool class, and then it calls this getTools method that we created in this C# class like this. And then it returns this one, and since this return value is a list of records from the tools from the tool table, and since we make this public, this list will be available on the web page, which is this toolmanagement.cs.html file, and it will be available here inside this for each. So then we have this model.tools, and then tools are this list that we created here, and then we can retrieve information for each record in this for each loop by using, so here var tool in model.tools, and then we can here in each new row of this HTML table we can retrieve tool.toolID, tool.toolname, and tool.tagID, and then in next iteration it will create a new row in this HTML table. So let's run this application and let's see what's happening. So this default index page is the same, but with click here under tool management, we are now retrieving all the tools that are available in the database. So we can go back to SQL Server and just create a new one here. So I can right click here, click edit top 200, and then I can create a new one, test, and then just generate some tag ID like this. And now if I go back to the web page and I'll refresh it, and then you see this new line has been added here, since this web page are now retrieving all the tools that are stored in our SQL Server database. So then let's go to the next step of this ASP.NET Web Application. So step number 5 is add a new tool into the database from the graphical user interface. So then we have this list of tools. So now I have added a button called New Tool, and when I click this button, a new web page appears with the title New Tool, and then I can add a new tool and store it into the database. So then I can add a new tag ID and a new tool name, click Save, and then this list will be updated with this new tool that has been created into the database. In order to do that, we also need to update the database and create a stored procedure called create tool or something, and then it has two input parameters, tool name, tag ID, and then inside the store procedure we need to create a simple insert statement, insert into tool, tool name, tag ID, values, tool name, and tag ID like this. You can also check if the tag is already inserted and used on a previous tool, like by using this if not exist, etc. So basically this is the create tool stored procedure which we need to create as part of the database. So let's go to Visual Studio and see the different updates we need to do in order to make this happen. So now we are back in Visual Studio and let's see what are the necessary changes to make this happen. So let's start with the tool management web page. This is almost identical, but we have added a button in the bottom of the web page, and the name is new tool. And then when we click on this button, we are going to a web page called new tool. So the next step is to create this web page, new tool. So then I just go to pages, right click and create a new Razor pages, and I have called it new tool, which I have here. Then I just click this, close this one and open this new tool. And basically this is the web page consisting of a text box for the tag ID and a text box for the tag name, for the tool name, and then a button in the bottom here, and the name for the button is save. And so when I click on this button, this tag ID and the tool name should be saved to the database using this stored procedure we have created. And all this should be inside a form with a method post. This means when I click on this save button, the web page do a post back to the server code. So let's go to the server code, which is this new tool.cs html.cs file, which we have here. So this is the code behind file, but before we go into the details here, we need to go to the tool class and create a new method called new tool. And inside this method, we basically call this new store procedure called create tool, and it has two parameters, tool name and tag name. And the input parameters to this new tool method is tool name and tag ID, and it has no return values. So basically this is the new method we need to create, new tool, and this method are used in the code behind file, which we have here. So then I have created a method here in the code behind file called save new tool, and it is retrieving the tool name from the web page by using request.form and the name of the text box tool name, and the same for the tag ID, request.form and the name of this text box. Then I create a new object of this tool class, and then I just call the new method we have created, new tool, with two input arguments, tool name and tag ID. And then I use this save new tool method inside this onPost method, which are automatically called when we have a post back from the web page. So then I just call the save new tool method here, which we have here. And then when this method has inserted a new tool into the SQL Server database, it just goes back to the tool management page and update that page using response.redirect here. This means that we just go to another web page from this web page. So basically that's all we need to do. So let's just start the application and let's see what's happening. So this is the startup page where you just scan. So here everything should be the same. But let's start. Now I have a new tag that are not registered in the database. So let's just tap it. And then you see unknown tag. This means that this new tag has not been registered in the database. So then I can go to tool management and then see all available tools and tags that are stored in the database. but this new tag has not been created yet. So then I can click on New Tool, and this new web page are opening this new tool, and then I just can tap the new tag ID on top of the reader like this, and then I can specify a tool name. I just call it test tool or something like this, and then I just click save, and then you see the information are stored in the database, and then this tool management web page are opening, and then you see here tool ID number 10 test tool, and this new tag ID has been created into the database. And then I can go to the home here and tag this new tag, and then you see information regarding this tag has been retrieved from the database, and you see here this is test tool, which is the new tool I just created in the database with this unique tag ID. I can create a new one. Now I have a new tag that are not used, so I just check it. It does not exist in the database, so then I go to tool management, click new tool, new tool 2. Oh, sorry, I just need to tap the tag ID first, then I can create a tool name, new tool number 2 or whatever, click save, and then you see this has been also stored in the database. Then I can go back to home, tap it, and then you see information regarding this new tool are retrieved from the database. So let's go to the next step of this application. So in the previous step, we added possibility to add new tools into the database from the web page, and now next step would be to also be able to edit that information from the web page. So here you see the updated application. So now in this updated application, I have created a hyperlink for each of the tool name, and when you click on this hyperlink, this new web page will be open called edit tool, and then and I click on green tool, the tool name will appear here in the text box, and the tag ID here will appear in the tag ID, and then you can change either the name or the tag ID or both, and click save, and this updated information will be stored in the database and then presented in this tool management web page. In order to make that happen, we need to create a new stored procedure. I have created a new stored procedure called edit tool with 3 input arguments: tool ID, tool name, tag ID, and then inside the stored procedure a simple update statement needs to be created. Update tool set tool name equal to the tool name input variable, comma, tag ID equals to the tag ID variable, where tool ID equals to the tool ID variable. So basically this is the new SQL server stored procedure we need to create in order to be able to update information in the database. So the first thing we need to create when we're back in Visual Studio is to create a new web page. So we need to create a new web page called edit tool. So let's just open this one, and then this web page is almost identical as the new tool web page. We have the same div, we have the header. Instead of new tool we have edit tool, and then we have this form with the same text boxes. We have one text box for the tool name and one text box for the tag ID. Then in addition we have a button called save in order to save this new information to the database. So basically this is the web page. Next, let's go to the tools class, and inside here we need to create a new method called you can call it whatever you like. I have called it get tool information, where I basically retrieve the tool name and the tag ID from the database, where tool ID equals to tool ID, and then the tool ID will be an argument or input parameter to this method. It doesn't so the return value is basically an object of this properties, tool ID, tool name and tag ID, that are retrieved from the database and then returned as part of this return parameter of this get tool information method. So that's the updated tools class. So let's go to the code behind file for edit tool, and then we need to so in the onGet method we need to retrieve the values for a specific tool from the database. So here I have created a get tool information method where I basically use this get tool information method in the tool class, and the return value is basically the data we need. And since we specify public here, this variable tool data will be available on the web page. So basically this is how we retrieve values from the database and then present it here in the web page in the different text boxes. So then I use value equals to @model.tooldata.toolname. So this is the information that you need to write in order to be able to show the actual tool name that are retrieved from the database in this tool name text box. And the same for the tag ID. Then I use value @model.tooldata.tagid like this. And then when I open the application, go to tool management, and then I can click on this green tool, and then you see in this edit tool page the tool name are now the default or the tool name that are in the database are now entered here in the text box, and the same for the tag ID. And the next now is to create the logic for what's happening when I click the save button. So let's just close it. And we have the save button here. So when I click the save button, it happens post back to the server. So then go to the code behind file, this edit tool, and then this on post will be automatically called, and then I have created a new method here called update tool, which I have here. And basically this method is just calling a new method in the tool class that we need to create. So let's go to the tool class, and then we have this new method called edit tool with the input parameters tool ID, tool name and tag ID. And then this method is using this new stored procedure we just created, edit tool, which has these three input arguments, tool ID, tool name and tag ID. So that's the updated tools class. And then by calling this update tool, which is here, and this one is basically calling this edit tool method that are updating the specific information in the database. And when this is finished, we just use a response redirect back to the tool management web page. So then just run the final application here now. I click on tool management. I want to edit this green tool. Click on this link. I just call it green tool 2. Click save. And then you see it goes back to the tool management web page, and the tool name has been updated to green tool 2. And you can also go to the database and also see that this information are now stored in the database. Same with the red tool 2, click save, and then it has been updated. I just change it back like this. So basically this is how we can present data from the database. We can add new data that are stored in the database, or we can edit or change existing data. So then let's go to the final step of this tutorial, and the final step will be to delete existing tool in the database. So now we have gone through all these steps, and the final step would be to delete existing tool in the database. And then you see this updated web page for the tool management. We have a button called New Tool for creating new tools. We have these hyperlinks for editing existing data, and then we have created a new button called Delete if you want to delete one of these items or one of these tools from the database. In order to make that happen, we also need to make a new store procedure called delete tool, and basically it's just a simple SQL statement called like this: delete from tool, where tool ID equals to the input argument alpha tool ID, like this. Let's go to C# and Visual Studio and see what we need to do in this final step. So back in Visual Studio, let's start by opening this tool management web page. So the only thing we need to change here is to add a new column in our table. I just call it action. You can call it whatever you like. And then inside the for each, this new line needs to be created. And then when inside here a button is created with the name delete, and when you click on this delete button, it will go into a web page called delete tool, and then it will specify the tool ID for that specific record. So basically this is the update we need to do in the tool management web page. So then next step is to create this new web page called delete tool, and this should be stored here under pages. So then I just open this delete tool, and basically the web page for this tool, it has no web page, but it has a code behind file, which you see here. So basically in the onGet method, when this delete tool are called, it retrieves the tool ID from the web page using this request.query and the name tool ID. It creates a new object of the tool class, and then inside the tool class I have created a new method called delete tool with an input argument tool ID, and then when this has been executed, it just use a response to redirect back to the tool management web page. And then let's go into the tools class, and then let's see. Here you see the updated new delete tool method that we have created with an input argument tool ID, and this method are using this delete tool store procedure, which has an input argument tool ID. So basically this method is calling the delete tool store procedure that are actually creating an item or a tool from the database. So basically that's all that you need to change. So let's just run the application. So this is the final step of this RFID ASP.NET web application. Here you have the main page where you can tap different tools and get information regarding that specific tool. You can go to tool management, get a list of all available tools that are in the database. You can click new tool in order to create a new one, or you can click on the hyperlink in order to edit an existing one, or finally you can delete one by clicking the delete button. So then let's delete this test tool we created in an earlier step, and then you see I also want to delete this new tool 2 from the database, like this. So now basically we have created an entire application where you can click here on scan in order to retrieve information from different tags. We can click on tool management, and then we can add new tool by tapping a new not used tag here, specify a tool name, tool test 3 or something, and then this will be saved to the database. We can change the name to tool test 4, which you see here, and finally we can also delete it. So basically this is an entire RFID web application created with ASP.NET Core. So let's summarize. So this is our final ASP.NET RFID web application. On the front page, or when we click scan here, we are able to scan different tools that we have available in our hardware store. We can click on tool management in order to either create new tools, edit tools, or delete tools. So basically we have made a basic RFID ASP.NET Core application, and it's important to take it step by step. This means that we should add more and more features slowly, step by step. We should start simple, then add more and more features. In that way it's so much easier to make it work and then test it before you take the next step. And then make sure that you always have a working application before you take the next step. And that's in that way it's so much easier when we create new functionality. It's so much easier to figure out where, if you have get any errors, it's so much easier to find where the errors are in your application, because we take it slowly, step by step. And then if you are running out of time before you are able to finish all the steps, you can just finish, because you have always a running application that you can use. And in this tutorial we made this simple application step by step by adding more and more features in these 7 steps. So that's all. So good luck with ASP.NET Core and your web applications. Thank you.